Hey, what's up? Let me tell you about Steve Wikoff. He's a real estate developer and pal of Donald Trump who's now been thrust into a diplomatic role for which he's clearly unqualified. Trump made him the lead negotiator between Russia and Ukraine for an attempted ceasefire. Wikoff recently had several remarkable interviews on Tucker Carlson and Fox News Channel, those bastions of journalistic integrity. Anyway, playing to this easily duped audience, Wikoff praised Putin and then repeated Russian propaganda, which sadly is becoming the norm from the Trump administration. On Fox News Channel, they at least asked him about Vladimir Putin's track record of murdering political opponents and atrocities in Ukraine. Wikoff then glibly responded, "There are two sides to every story." There are two sides to murdering, Steve? I guess if you consider the murderer, Russia, on one side and the murderees on the other, yeah. But why don't you come to Ukraine with me, Steve, and you can explain to the relatives of the 10,000 murdered civilians Putin's side of the story. I bet they're eager to know why their loved ones are no longer there and that Putin has a very logical explanation. And then on Tucker Carlson, Wikoff waxed absolutely poetic about how Putin gave him a painting to give Trump after Putin had gone to church to pray for Trump after his so-called assassination attempt. Steve was so moved by this. This is rich. Vladimir Putin is a former KGB agent. He came to power in Russia when he murdered over 300 of his own fellow citizens in an apartment bombing in 1999. He did this so he could garner support, play a tough guy leader, and blame it on Chechen terrorists. He then proceeded to do in Chechnya what he is trying to do now in Ukraine, which is to wipe Chechnya off the map so Russia can subjugate it and control it, killing tens of thousands of civilians in the process. To even suggest that this mass murdering war criminal who runs Christian torturing Russia is praying to anyone about anybody stretches the bounds of ridiculousness. But perhaps the dumbest thing Wikoff said was that he believed Putin when Putin said he wanted nothing but peace and had no intention to invade the rest of Europe. Do you know how often Putin said the same thing leading up to the Ukrainian full invasion in 2022, Steve? Here's a hint. Dozens. Then, Wikoff went on to repeat Russian propaganda that Russian occupying parts of Ukraine is justified because some people there speak Russian and there have been referendums. Yo, please study history, Steve. Everyone in Soviet Ukraine was taught only the Russian language for decades. So yeah, a lot of people still speak Russian. In Cajun, Louisiana, people still speak French. Should we give part of that state to France? Or what about South Texas, where Spanish is spoken? Are we going to give that to Mexico? Are we going to give Puerto Rico to Spain? This would be funny if it wasn't so serious, but this is not a game. Ukraine is not an office building in an undeveloped part of town, Steve. It's a country, a big country with 40 million people and a hell of a lot of farmland that feeds a hell of a lot of people, you stupid idiots. Many Ukrainians are being tortured right now in Russian-occupied parts of Ukraine. You ridiculous, unserious clown. Should Georgia give up Russian-occupied land like Ossetia? Should Moldova give Russia Transnistria? It sure sounds like you're on the side of the invading war criminals, Steve, rather than the rule of law, the right side of history in the United States of America. As far as the so-called referendums, Wikoff is referring to the sham referendums after Putin illegally invaded Crimea and eastern Ukraine in 2014. After displacing millions, like my pal Anastasia and her family, Putin then forced the remaining citizens to vote under threat of gunpoint from the Russian military. If a Russian soldier is holding a gun on you while you vote, who would you vote for, Steve? That's why nobody but rogue states like North Korea, China, or Iran recognizes these referendums, Steve. Is that who you're aligning the United States with now? The certitude of Wikoff's ignorance is astounding. But even a hack real estate developer with no diplomatic experience should know better. It really isn't that hard. Some people are concluding that Wikoff is simply out of his depth, and he's being played by Putin. But I beg to differ. I don't think Wikoff is being played by Putin. I think he's being paid by Putin.